Dimensional Coalescence is a game that I actually been planning on talking about for some time now. Ever since in my last video where I talked about the Sonic.exe disaster fan games, there was two other fan games that I needed to talk about. That being, well, the other one I'll have to, well, technically you guys would have already knew which those two games were, considering that I somewhat showed them a bit, you know? But for this video, I'm going to be starting off with one of them, Dimensional Coalescence. Now, Dimensional Coalescence is pretty much, well, a fan game of the already deleted Sonic.exe The Disaster. Now, this game actually has been out for quite some time now, and ever since the 1.0 prototype update came out, this game has spiraled of popularity, as time went on. Now, like I said, this game's been out for quite some time already to begin with. This game's actually been out for a long time. But it wasn't as popular until the 1.0 prototype update came out. And yeah, it spiraled in popularity. There's still a ton of people playing it right now. And yeah, I can see why. I mean, again, it's a Sonic TD fan game, but the game has gotten so much better ever since the prototype update came out. Now, as I said multiple times, this is a prototype, so there are things that are bound to be changed in the future. But in the meantime, I want to talk about the game, and I want to talk about all of its characters that are in the game, and I just want to get to the point. And I'll even talk about the gameplay as well. So, in the meantime, let's talk about, well, Dimensional Coalescence. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the gameplay. Now, I already talked about how TD's gameplay works, so I'm just going to keep this one short. Survivors have to basically survive in a time limit until a green ring appears, and then they simply have to jump into green ring, and there you go, they escape, while the killer has to kill all the survivors. Simple as that, right? Like I said, just going to keep this one short, because I already explained how TD's gameplay works, and this is a TD fan game, so I'm just not going to talk that much about the gameplay. However, I will say this, there is different game modes. Now, TD actually had different game modes. The thing is, with Sonic TD, you can only access these game modes through private servers. And Dimensional Coalescence, you can actually play these other game modes in public servers. Yes, these other game modes are actually public, not private, because you can actually occasionally encounter these game modes at some point. Believe me, I was playing Dimensional Coalescence, and there's random times where I'll get different game modes and not the normal game mode. So, of course, we got the first game mode, which is pretty much just the normal game mode, the usual stuff. Not gonna really talk much about the normal game mode, because it's really just, survive the timer and all that. But there's two other game modes that I want to discuss about. We got Protective VIP, which basically, Protective VIP is that you pretty much have to protect the VIP. And the VIP dies, well, the game's over. But if the VIP escapes through the green ring, the game will also end. And then we got another game mode, Last Man Standing. Last Man Standing is a pretty interesting one. Normally you have to survive against the killer, but in Last Man Standing, of course, sorry, I stutter a lot. My bad everybody, I don't like scripts in those videos, so bear with me. Normal game mode, you just gotta survive until the green ring appears for you to jump in. While Protective VIP, you have to protect the VIP and hope that the timer gets low so the VIP can escape through the green ring. Normally in those two game modes, you pretty much have to survive, and the VIP has to survive. In Last Man Standing, it's pretty much like the opposite. In Last Man Standing, you actually have to let your teammates die. Because in order for you to win in Last Man Standing, you have to be the last survivor to survive. So as long as the killer kills everyone else, the last survivor will win. So, yeah, pretty interesting game mode that you have to let your teammates die just so you can win. So, like normal mode, it's just survivor versus killer. For the VIP, it's survivor versus killer, and the survivor has to protect the VIP. In Last Man Standing, though, everyone's against each other because the last survivor needs to obviously die. Well, no, the last survivor obviously needs to live to be the winner. Now, that's all I can really talk about the gameplay of Dimensional Coalescence. I think it's time that I talk about the characters finally. The first survivor that I want to talk about is good old Cuphead himself. Yes, Cuphead. You know, that game. Anyways, we're going to talk about Cuphead right there and talk about his abilities. So Cuphead's got 3 abilities: Dash, Parry, and Super R2. And let's talk about Dash. Dash is, well, a dash. While Cuphead is midair, press the ability button to, well, do a dash. If you dash towards the killer, it will do a small stun on them for a small duration. Mainly, I prefer to use the ability for distance. I don't really use it to stun the killer. Then again, it is kind of the whole point of the dash ability in the original game anyway. And then the second ability is Parry. While in midair, you can perform a parry. If you time the parry perfectly on the killer, it will stun them and even give you a card. Now, I'm going to talk about the card in a moment because that's where we get to his third ability, Super R2. Now, how Super Art works is that you have to actually earn that ability. By doing what? By getting the 3 cards. By parrying the killer 3 times. Pretty much exactly like the original game he originates from, Cuphead. Now once you get the 3 cards, that's when Super R2 activates. Super R2 basically grants Cuphead invincibility for a certain duration. This can be really good as a last resort of use if you're about to die, or it can be very useful if you're just simply trying to escape through the green ring once it spawns. This is definitely one of the best abilities in the game, but of course you gotta earn that ability to be able to get value out of it when you use it correctly. Cuphead is actually a really good character to play as, and when you get good with Cuphead, he is absolutely really good. The next survivor we are going to be talking about is Monica. Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club. Man, I really gotta continue from where I left off in that game. Anyways, Monica from DDLC. Let's talk about her and her abilities. So of course, she originates from Doki Doki Literature Club, and we're going to talk about her abilities. The first ability, actually, Monica in this game actually has 4 abilities. As I found out, she can gain a 4th ability when Frisk uses her ability when buffing her. Which I will get to Frisk in a moment, when we get to that point. But yeah, pretty much she has 4 abilities. So, let's see. But I could be wrong though. Anyways, let's get started. So the first ability we're going to be looking at is Glitch. Glitch pretty much gives you a buff. Basically increases your defenses when taking damage. When the ability ends, you get a small speed boost. Then we got Write Poem, which gives you a speed boost. Plus, when you're near a survivor while using the ability, it will give him a small buff, which I'm assuming is the same as when you use the Glitch ability. I don't know. Then we got Manipulate, which will pretty much manipulate jump pads and, well, spikes. Basically, if you manipulate the spikes can't damage the survivors. If you manipulate the jump pads, the killer can't use the jump pads. This is pretty good for just pretty much screwing over the killer. And then we got her last ability, which again, I could be wrong about this. I don't even know. I never used it before because, well, I never had a Frisk buff me before. Virus. Either this was removed in the game or this was just reworked. Again, I don't know. But what Virus does is that basically you do like a small stun on the killer and I guess it disables... I think it disables the killer's abilities. I don't know. A commenter on one of my videos told me that's what the ability does and how you can use it. But then again, I don't know. I never used that ability because I never had a Frisk use a buff ability on me. But overall, Monica is, yeah, pretty much a support character at most occasions. And she can be really good when you know how to use her correctly. She's definitely not as strong as like someone like Cuphead, but definitely can be useful in most scenarios. Next survivor, we're going to be talking about the one that I main, Sonic the Hedgehog, the blue blur himself. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog is actually a pretty good survivor when utilized correctly. He's got 3 moves abilities: Speed Boost, Spin Dash, and Springs. We're going to talk about his first ability, Speed Boost. When you use Speed Boost, Sonic will run really fucking fast, which is really good because you gain a fuck ton of distance from the killer. So this is pretty much good from getting away from the killer entirely to avoid, well, getting hit, obviously. Basically, it's, definitely one of the best abilities in the game because of how much distance you get from the killer. The next ability I'm going to be looking at is Spin Dash. Now, Spin Dash is also a pretty good ability because it's also used to stun the killer. When you use Spin Dash, Sonic will charge a Spin Dash, and you have to spam a jump button, I think, to basically charge up the meter bar. Once the bar is full, Sonic will go start Spin Dashing. If contacting with the killer, Sonic will get pushed back and will get a small speed boost while the killer gets stunned. Then we got his last ability, Spring. You basically just prank down a spring, and you and your teammates can use it. That's it. And again, springs can be useful on some occasions, whether you can use it to your advantage to juke the killer easily, or you just simply place them in certain spots where springs normally are not located at. But, yeah, I'm going to say this, Sonic is definitely a pretty good survivor when utilized correctly, and considering he is my main, he's really fucking good when you really know how to play as him. Overall, I love Sonic. He is really fucking good. He is fun. I enjoy playing as him, considering I main him. Yeah, awesome. Alright, next survivor, Frisk from Undertale. Yes, you heard me, the main protagonist from Undertale. Now, Frisk is a pretty cool one. Now, she's pretty much another support class survivor as well, but we're going to talk about her 3 abilities: CT, Pull, and Act. And this is where Act comes in because I mentioned this about Monica before. Anyways, let's talk about CT. CT, Frisk will, drink the tea, and she gains a massive speed boost, which basically can help you get distance from the killer. The next ability, which I was really shit at the time until I realized what it actually does, Pull. Frisk will basically use Flowey to basically pull a survivor near her. That way, the survivor teammate will get pulled near Frisk, which is good for saving your teammates from, getting downed by the killer or even getting killed by the killer. And yeah, it's pretty good. Now we got her last ability, Act. Act is basically, what it does is that when you're near a survivor and use Act, it will give a certain survivor some kind of buff. And I guess this is where Monica gets the ability Virus when Frisk gives her said buff. Again, never had that happen, so I don't know. But anyways, yeah, Act pretty much buffs a certain survivor. Frisk can also be good when utilized correctly, considering she is mostly a support class. I also forgot to mention that when you use CT when near a survivor, they also get a speed boost as well, but I'm not sure if it heals them. But yeah, Frisk is really good when utilized correctly. The next survivor is Sans Undertale. Yes, another Undertale character. Let's fucking go. So, of course, we got a second Undertale character, Sans, and we're going to talk about his 3 abilities: Gaster Blasters, Teleport, and Bone Trap. Gaster Blaster is definitely one of my favorite abilities from the game. When using Gaster Blaster, Sans will summon 2 Gaster Blasters, and those 2 Gaster Blasters will fire their beams depending where you want them to fire at, because you have to select which area you want them to fire at. If one of the Gaster Blasters hits the killer will be stunned. Next ability is Teleport. When you use that ability, it will give you an option to where you want to teleport, and when you use the Teleport ability, it teleports you. That ability can be used to basically get away from the killer and to avoid getting killed pretty much. The last ability is Bone Trap. Bone Trap is Also a good ability. Basically, you can use it to simply trap the killer in bones. And this can be utilized well, perfectly. Like, there are times where you can use it at a perfect time. Like if the killer is stunned or something, that's when you can use Bone Trap to trap the killer inside. Because they can't move when they're stunned. So yeah. And yeah, that's really all I gotta say about Sense. Also, another thing I want to bring up, Sense's health bar is different. Instead of Survivor just having 100 HP, Sense just has dodges. I thought I'd bring this up because it'll be funny. Anyways, that's enough about goofy old boy Sans. The next survivor we're going to be talking about is, well, Vanilla herself. Cream's very hot mama, who is using Undyne's weapon for some reason. I don't know, probably do with Dimensional Coalescence's lore, which I don't really know much jack shit about, but yep, lore. Anyways, let's talk about Vanilla herself and her three abilities: Grab, Rush, and of course Counter. So first, we're going to be talking about Grab. Now Grab is pretty much a stun. You swing your arm out to try to grab the killer. If you successfully grab the killer, Vanilla will beat the shit out of the killer and will toss them, and the killer will be stunned afterwards. Which is really good for basically, just just grabbing the killer and beating the shit out of them and tossing him away to save your teammate. Yeah. Next ability is, well, of course, Rush. Now, Rush, basically, Vanilla will gain a very good speed boost. And another thing I want to bring up is that you can also use Rush to grab your teammates to help them get out of dangerous situations. And I think you can also use it to stun the killer as well. Unless they change it so it doesn't do that anymore. I'm not entirely sure. I never tried it. Because I know, back in the 0.5 update or so, Vanilla can stun the killer with Rush. But I think they made it so it doesn't do that anymore. Not entirely sure. Her last ability is Counter. It's basically like a parry serve ability. What Vanilla will do when using Counter is that Vanilla will basically stop in place and pull out Undyne's weapon. If the killer hits Vanilla while she does the animation, Vanilla will shove Undyne's weapon into the killer, stunning them. Basically, Counter is a parry ability, and you need to time it perfectly if you ever want to get value out of it. Very satisfying to get value out of it, though. It's pretty cool. I love characters like that take skill to get good with. Anyways, that's all I gotta talk about Vanilla. Time to talk about the next survivor. And the next survivor we are going to be talking about is none other than the good old egghead himself, Dr. Ivo Robotnik, or most importantly, Dr. Eggman. He's got three abilities: Mind Trap, Jetpack, and of course, Flamethrower. So let's talk about Mind Trap first. So Mind Trap is, well, a trap. You place down a Mind Trap, and you can basically place it on any spot you want. But if you really want to be useful with it, you might as well place it on a good spot that you think that the killer is most likely going to run into. Once you place down a Mind Trap, it will have some sort of delay before it activates. Once the killer runs through it, it will make a beeping noise before it pulls the killer towards it and explodes, stunning the killer. Next up, we got Jetpack. Jetpack, how this works is that you can basically use it. Once you use it, it will charge up. And if the jetpack charges up, it will, well, give you a boost. Or you can even use the boost early, but it won't be as farther as a fully charged jetpack. Or your jetpack will even go off on its own if you ever get hit by the killer. And we got his last ability, which is my favorite one, Flamethrower. Flamethrower basically will have Eggman pull out a flamethrower and fire flames at the killer, pushing the killer back, obviously, preventing the killer from even being able to get close to the doctor. Overall, he's pretty good once you figure out how to use him correctly. He's also my second main. Anyways, that's enough with the doc. Time for the next survivor. Next survivor we're going to be talking about is Sayori from Doki Doki Literature Club. Yep, another DDLC character. So she's got three abilities: Heal, Cheer, and Scream. And she's even got a new mechanic. which I'll get into when we get to the point of Scream. Anyways, heal. Heal is basically, well, makes you heal yourself. However, when you're near a survivor, you can also heal them. So she's pretty much a full-on support character. And that's where we get to, well, Cheer. Cheer gives you a small speed boost, but if you interact with a survivor, they also will gain said small speed boost. I think that's how it works, I don't know. But, yep, that's Cheer. Now we got Scream. Now, whenever you play as Sayori, she has a sanity meter. If her sanity goes below 50, Scream will activate, and Cheer will be disabled. Scream, basically, well, you scream, but it gives you a speed boost, helping you gain distance from the killer. Anyways, that's all I really gotta say about Sayori. Time to talk about the next survivor. Next up is Cuphead's brother, Mugman. Now, unlike Cuphead, Mugman's actually got some different movesets in this game. He's got 3 abilities: Pea Shooter, X Shot, and Super Art 1. Let's talk about Pea Shooter. Pea Shooter is, well, exactly like how it is in the original game. You do a nice little pew pew at the killer. And you can also use it to damage the killer. Well, it doesn't stun them, but when you're shooting at the killer with it, it slows them down. And when you shoot enough, you can also gain a card. And also, you also going to need those cards too if you want to be able to use X Shot and Super Art 1. Let's get to X Shot. If you get enough cards, you can use X Shot. When you use X Shot, you can basically stun the killer with it. However, it's also a cost of a card, so use it wisely. Then there's Super Art 1, which is basically, well, just like the original game. Fucking Mugman will shoot out a big, massive pile of milk from his head and blow the killer very far away. But like I said, you need to get enough cards to be able to use his ability, so you gotta earn it. Mugman is a pretty difficult character to actually get good with, actually. He does have a high skill ceiling considering how hard it is to just beam the killer to death with the Pea Shooter. But he's really good once you get a hang of him. That's all I gotta say for good old Mugman. The next survivor is good old Cream. Yes, Cream the Rabbit. She's got 3 moves: Drop Dash, Jump Boost, and of course, Glide. Let's talk about Drop Dash. Drop Dash is basically an ability to help you gain distance from the killer, or to help yourself with other scenarios, like trying to save a teammate or something when they're down, and the killer decides to camp them. Drop Dash, whenever Cream is in midair, and you use the ability while she's in midair, she'll do like a little spin dash, basically to help herself get away from the killer and such. Next up is Jump Boost. Jump Boost, well, gives you a jump boost buff. However, when you're near a survivor, they also will gain the jump boost buff. So she's pretty much another support character as well. Then we got her last ability, Glide. Basically, she can use Glide to, well, use it to glide somewhere with her umbrella, which can be used to get away from the killer too in certain spots of the maps. And not only that, you can also carry a survivor as well, if they jump onto you, of course. Which, yeah, basically Cream can also use that to help her teammates get away from the freaking killer. Overall, Cream is not easy to play, but when you get a hang of her and know how to utilize her, she's a pretty good character to play as. Next up is good old Bendy. Yes, Bendy from fucking the Bendy games, obviously. Considering there's like 2 games about Bendy now. But yeah, good old Bendy. So, he's got 3 abilities, obviously. We got Ink Wave, Ink Puddle, and Ink Flow. Ink Wave is pretty much Blaze's ability, Heat Wave. You aim it, and then you slam your fist on the ground, and you summon like a wave, and it pushes the killer back. It's literally fucking Blaze's ability, Heat Wave, from Sonic.exe Disaster. But that's all I gotta say for Ink Wave. As for Ink Puddle, it's another trap. Basically, you can place down an ink puddle, and the killer runs into it, and they slow down. And yeah, that can be pretty good. And you can also place it in pretty good spots too, like springs, or pretty much just place it in places where the killer is, forced to run into, like jump pads, or places where you gotta use jump pads to get to, places that you are forced to get into. Now his last ability is Ink Flow. Now Ink Flow, it's pretty much basically Ink Flow is where you bury yourself into the ground. Not only will it give you a small speed boost, however, it also highlights the killer. And you can also press the ability button, or the duration ends, you'll just jump out of the ground. However, if you jump out of the ground onto the killer, it will stun them and even give a nice little bendy jump scare. But it is pretty good. Now I gotta say, Bendy is actually really good. When you utilize him correctly, he is really, really strong. I definitely recommend playing as Bendy if you want to give him a shot. He's really good. But that's enough talk about Bendy. Let's talk about Bendy's friend, Boris. He's Ridley fucking Amy from Sonic.exe Disaster. I'll make this one quick. He's got 3 abilities: Axe Throw, Axe Attack, and Axe Block. Actually, Axe Block is actually new. Amy doesn't block with her hammer in TD. Whatever. So, Axe Throw. Simple. You draw your axe at the killer. If the axe hits the killer, it stuns them. You have to go back and grab your axe. Unlike Amy, where you have to, basically run to your hammer and, press a button to grab the hammer back, Boris will just grab it instantly. Yeah, simple as that. Then there's Axe Attack, which is simple. You just swing your axe and you hit the killer, you stun them. Then we got Axe Block, which is pretty much works like Knuckles' block from Sonic TD. I'm sorry if I keep bringing Sonic TD up. I know the game's deleted and all that, but considering I played the game a good amount of times, it's just, I thought I'd compare it to TD at least a little bit. I know it's a TD fan game, but, I just thought I'd say it real quick. Anyways, Axe Block is basically you'll do a block animation. If the killer hits you while you're blocking, you block, you'll get damage, and the killer gets like a short stun duration. That's enough about Forest. Now it's finally time to talk about the 3 selectable killers in this game. The first killer that we are going to be talking about is Vortex. Vortex is pretty much the Sonic.exe of this game. Vortex got 5 abilities. Yes, 5. And we'll get into why he has 5 abilities in a moment. Because it may seem like he only has 4 abilities, when really he has 5 abilities. So first off, we're going to start off with his first ability, Laugh. He just laughs. That's it. Then we got his next ability, Attack. Vortex, swing his hands out to deal damage to survivors. However, you can hold Attack to do a lunge. Well, if you hold it at least. And if you hold it long enough, you'll basically do a lunge. Which, yeah, it's pretty much like Sonic.exe and Sonic. Okay, I gotta stop comparing Dimensional Coalescence to Sonic TD, for God's sake. Anyways, that's enough for Attack. Next up is Jump Attack. When active, Vortex will do a little animation before he jumps in the air. If he lands on the ground, he will basically, cause a little explosion. However, the survivors can counter this by simply jumping at the right time. But if they don't jump, they will take damage. Then his last ability is Burrow. Vortex will burrow himself into the ground to gain himself a speed boost, and he even highlights all survivors. Basically, you just use his ability for information, really. Now we got his last ability, which is why I'm going to be mentioning the 5 abilities he has. His 5th and last ability I'm going to be talking about is called Outburst. You see, whenever Vortex gets stunned, there is a bar that will show up saying Outburst Meter. Basically, you only will gain an Outburst meter whenever you get stunned by a certain survivor or a certain move from said survivor. And once the Outburst meter is full, Outburst will be active. And what Outburst does is that you pretty much go into a rage mode, and it pretty much makes it so you deal extra damage. That's all Outburst does. Outburst lasts for a certain duration, and once Outburst ends, that's it. You're not OP anymore. But again, the only way you can get Outburst active is that you have to pretty much have survivors stun the shit out of you like crazy. But that's all I gotta really say about good old Vortex. I also want to mention that Vortex is my main. Well, when I'm playing Killer, obviously. My main character to play as whenever I'm Killer. Because I love Sonic.exe. Anyways, that's enough about good old Vortex. Let's talk about another killer. The second killer on this list is Yuri. Yes, Yuri from Doki Go Literature Club. Now, knowing Yuri, she is, not right in the head in the original game, but of course in Dimensional Coalescence, she is an absolute fucking psychopath who clearly has gone insane. Yuri has, again, 5 abilities. Her first ability is Frenzy. Yuri will start swinging her sword like fucking crazy. However, it deals amount of small chip damage. But, considering she'll swing her sword like a fucking madman, you'll be dealing a decent amount of damage if you get a lot of those hits. Her next ability is Laugh. She just laughs. That's it. Her next ability is Knife Attack. You just swing your knife, deal damage if you hit a survivor. Her next ability is Knife Dash, which basically Yuri will do a dash. And if she manages to touch the survivor while dashing, she'll grab the survivor, stab them, and deal damage. Then her last ability is Indicator. It just highlights all survivors. I also want to mention that Yuri actually has a passive ability. What's her passive ability, you may ask? Basically, her passive ability is that basically in the survivor screen, there'll be these weird pop-ups that will appear on the screen, and you have to get rid of them. And if you don't get rid of them in time, basically your screen, the corners of your screen will be filled by like purple blood or some shit, whatever, and it'll even highlight you to Yuri herself. And then again, Indicator has a good ability, but then again, the passive helps too, just in case of Indicator's on cooldown. That's all I gotta really talk about. Good old Yuri. Also, Yuri is my favorite character from DDLC, so awesome. Alright, time to finally talk about the last killer of this game. The last killer in this game is, of course, the main bad guy from the genocide route of Undertale. Well, at least the bad guy that you would most likely be playing as if you're ever doing the genocide route in Undertale. Kara. Kara is, of course, well, yeah, the fucking bitch that you technically play as in the genocide route in Undertale. And she's got, well, 4 moves. Well, 4 abilities. First ability is Slash. Basically, she'll do a simple slash. Actually, no. Slash is a range ability. When using Slash, Kara will aim, and when you use a shoot button, she'll swing out like slash projectiles, and it deals damage to survivors. Her next ability is Knife Attack. Kara will swing her knife to deal damage. Her next ability is Save Throw. Basically, she will aim, and when you use the ability, you can shoot out a save star, and it teleports you. That could be good to catching up to certain survivors. And then we got her last ability, Save. Basically, how Save works is that it's also an indicator ability, but also an ability you can use to your advantage. When using Save, you'll see a text that says File Save, and it indicates where survivors at. However, the survivors are not there. How this works is that it's pretty much like a save file that you can load. When the save is well saved, you basically have to head to a certain spot to where the area of the survivor was last located at, and you pretty much can hit save again or just wait for the duration to end, but I'd rather just hit the ability again, and you'll get a text that will read fire loaded, and boom, they teleported. The survivors will just teleport to to where they were last located at. This is good for obviously locating survivors, but can also be good for taking advantage of them, thinking they got away when in reality they really didn't. But I recommend just mainly using save for indicators, obviously, because by the time you're chasing someone, you don't really need to use it. But it is pretty good on her list. And Kara even has a passive ability. At first, Kara will start off as level 1, which means she doesn't deal with much damage yet. However, when she's dealing damage and even downs the survivor, she'll level up. The more levels she has, the more damage she will deal. When she gets to, well, the highest amount of LV, she becomes extremely deadly. There's even an achievement you can get for Kara if you reach to level 20, which I actually did, by the way. It wasn't easy, but I did get that achievement. And that's really all I gotta say about good old Kara herself. In good old conclusion, Dimensional Coalescence is a really fantastic and amazing fan game. Again, it is a fan game of a deleted game, but at least considering that TD is gone, this is at least one of the best alternates we got. Yes, I know there are people, at least multiple individuals, doing their own remakes of Sonic TD, but only time will tell whenever these remakes actually release. But, as of right now, this game, along with a few others I'll cover, will be the best alternatives we got as of right now. But, nonetheless, this game is actually really fantastic. I love that the characters are completely from different scenarios, like from different games and such. Like, you got Bendy and Boris from Bendy and the Ink Machine. You got the Doki Doki Literature Club characters, Undertale characters, even fucking Cuphead and Mugman are there. And of course, we got good old Sonic on the XC, or in that case, Vortex, because you know, it's a TD fan game. It kind of makes sense that we have a Sonic EXE character in this scenario. And yeah, ever since the 1.0 prototype update came out, this game has actually gotten horrifically a lot better. This game was already good in the old days, but you know, it wasn't much. But then when the 1.0 prototype update came out, that's when the game really started to shine. And the update came out like some days later or so after fucking TD got deleted, which is crazy. It's crazy that this amazing update came out sometime after TD's deletion. But enough about all that. Overall, this game is really amazing. I definitely recommend playing this. This is one of the best Sonic TD fan games ever made. Now, since Outcome Memories, since Dimensional Coalescence is done being spoke about from me, it's time for me to talk about the other great Sonic TD fan game. Yes, your next Robloxia Until Dawn.